You got Johnny Mac and Jody Mac. And we've got Ed Kracz with us. It's always good to get Eddie K in the mix. Ed, I've been checking out your stuff at Sports Illustrated. It's an ongoing process. We continue to do it. I did it last night on WIP till the wee hours of the morning. Grading Howie Roseman. It's week one of the offseason. And, oh, by the way, it's kind of like the Kentucky Derby. I'll use my horse racing degenerate status to help make a point. It's a mile and a quarter race. None of the horses have ever gone that distance before. But don't kid yourself. Those first 200 yards are key because it's 20 horses out of the gate. You need to be in position. If you get blocked and drop back, you got to loop the entire field. You can absolutely lose the race in the first 200 yards of the Kentucky Derby, even though it's a mile and a quarter race. So those first couple of days / now full week can be key. Oh, we got a lot to go. I'm not dismissing the rest of the offseason, but you can or can't lose the free agency offseason in the first week. How you grade out Howie Roseman, A+ to F, for the first 8 days of free agency?
Yeah, I think he's put himself in a pretty good position. If you're going to use the Kentucky Derby analogy, that first 200 yards, he came out of the gate and signed Brandon Graham, and Jason Kelsey decided to return for another year. Those, to me, are two big gets. And then he brought back his secondary, James Bradberry, Darius Slay. I'd give Howie at this point, I'd probably give him a B+. As we head into the quarter pole or whatever. I'm not
That's a good one. Yes, exactly right, Ed Kracz. Yeah. You non-horse racing player knows the terminology. I'm impressed.
But I'd give him a B+, and maybe a B even, maybe not that plus. I mean, I'm not really in love with the Slay deal.
Really? What? Whoa, you got to explain that. Why don't you like?
No, I think you're going to be in love with it when you see it, Ed.
Well, that's the key.
We haven't seen it yet.
Right. We have to see it. And I haven't seen it. And all the reports are that it's a 3-year deal, which,
it's not.
Unless you can get out of that on the last year.
Yeah. I think this is my prediction, Ed. This is my prediction. Not only can they get out of it in the last year, my prediction is they will be able to get out of it next year if they want, with very minimal impact. We'll see.
Right.
There's a possibility. We haven't seen it yet. My guess is they guaranteed his money this year, which was $17.5 million. They're going to put like a roster bonus, third day of the new league year, $5 million, and that's the guaranteed money. But they can also turn it down if they want to. In other words, if he has a down year, they'll say, all right, thanks for the memories. We're not going to pay this roster bonus. You become a free agent. That's my guess. If that happens, that's pretty good, right?
If it happens, sure. But until we see it, I'm going with a B. And, maybe that could rise to a B+ or an A- once we see that deal. But until we see it, I'm going to go B with just Slay. I mean, when you look at, maybe you had a chance at Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, depending on, what they offered him early on. I mean, I'd rather have a 25-year-old safety coming back than a 32-year-old cornerback, if that's what it came down to, if you're talking about money. So, right there is kind of why it's not an A- too, because of letting Chauncey go. And who knows if he wanted to come back, who knows what the Eagles' offer was to him initially. His agent came out and talked about it on Twitter yesterday. But you hate to lose a 25-year-old safety, no matter what you think of him as a person or whatever the feeling towards him was.
I don't know who to believe. I mean, Jeff McClain wrote a piece evidently this morning. We all know how good Jeff is. Team viewed him as a risk if he signed a multi-year deal. Well, then, did they offer him a multi-year deal? The risk being that Gardner-Johnson could be affected by the millions of dollars he would be being paid. More questions about an initial friction by Eagles leaders, internal support that got him to buy in. But In other words, he was high maintenance, which I think is fair to say. I think we all know that. He's a high maintenance guy.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think the Eagles wanted CJ back? Do you think because it's pretty clear to me they wanted him back, but they wanted him back at a cost-effective price from their standpoint, which was about $8 million a year.
Yeah, but John, let me ask you this, both you guys. Again, I'm working off Jim Trotter yesterday. I saw him on the NFL Network. He said that they brought CJ Gardner brought the offer back to the Eagles and said 1 year, $8 million, $6.5 million guaranteed. You guys match. I'd prefer to be back here in Philadelphia. And they said that, thank you, no. I'm sure they would have liked to have him under a $8 million per year contract with a lot more flexibility built into it. Don't know if they were hoping to be as flexible as was reported by CJ Gardner-Johnson's agency that 17 of 24 million were in the final year of the deal. That doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. But did the Eagles miss out, if the reporting is accurate, on not just saying, okay, yeah, we'll take you for 1 year at $8 million and we have to do renegotiating other contracts to clear that kind of cap. They might not have that space now, but should they have worked to do that if they had the chance to match it?
Well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, that to me is a bargain. If you're only going to get 1 year, you're not locked into him past that, obviously. So yeah, I don't know. Something must have happened between the time they made that initial offer to him, allegedly, in the early part of free agency, and then almost a week later when he took that 1 year from the Lions. I don't know what it is, if it's they just decided to go in a different direction for whatever reason. But yeah, if that's the case, I certainly would have jumped and given him that 1 year, $6.5 million, $8 million, whatever it was, to come back for a year. Again, 25 years old, big playmaker. And I think, John, I think I saw you tweet this out, that Pro Football Focus had him only ranked, I think, as what, the 49th?
49th, yeah.
Best
49th.
Defensive back, was it?
Safety.
Safety.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
and that's, another thing in Jeff's report, occasionally prone to mental errors, missed tackles. And you bring up the PFF grade. Did we just overrate Chauncey because of the interceptions? Because remember, Ed, it's not only the Eagles. You can say the Eagles disrespected him. It'd be like CJ. There's 31 other teams, and they weren't banging down his door to sign him to a big money deal. Did we just all overrate this particular player because of the splash plays, the interceptions, which, look, part of that had to do with the 70-sack pass rush. I mean, there are other avenues that allow somebody like that to make plays.
Yeah, we had the up close look at him for 17 games plus, and maybe we did overrate him just because of those numbers. But listen, those numbers are what they are, and if you're going to be out of position or miss tackles, you're making up for it in other areas. You're turning the ball over. You think back to that game. I think it was in Houston when it was tied at halftime, and you're playing the Texans, who had 1 or 2 wins at the time, and Chauncey made a big interception with the Texans on the march in the second half there, and gave the Eagles the ball back, and they went down, scored, and took over the game from there. But that was a huge pick. So be that as it may, if he's deficient in other areas, he's still making plays. And 6 picks is a lot of picks when you only play 12 games.
And 12 games.
Right.
Led the league in interceptions, missed 5 games.
Exactly. But then the flip side of that is the Eagles still did pretty well in those games that he missed. I mean, it wasn't like they were really missing him that badly. So, I think losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, no matter how it happened, is a mistake, and it could potentially hurt the Eagles down the line. Now they have 2 availabilities at safety after losing Epps and now Gardner-Johnson.
Here's where I would question whose report were you just reading, John?
Jeff McClain's.
Jeff McClain. And just give me a couple of quick highlights that aren't necessarily complimentary to the player.
Occasionally prone to mental errors or missed tackles, initial friction, Eagles leaders' internal support got him to buy into the program in a contract year. Marcus Hayes talked about Denard Wilson's responsibility The team viewed him. This is the key. The team, which doesn't make a lot of sense if they offered him anything, but the team viewed him as a risk if he signed a multi-year deal. The risk being that Gardner-Johnson could be affected by the millions of dollars he was.
All right. See, here's where I appreciate Marcus's report. His was out there before the contract was done. Marcus was saying what he was saying when he was still a free agent and could have either re-signed or gone elsewhere. Jeff McLean's writing this after the Eagles decide that they're not going to make a play for the guy. After it's been reported that they offered him a 3-year contract, but they think that a multi-year contract could be a risk. Oh, except they offered a multi-year contract. So which one is it? If you're going to air dirty laundry, better to do it in advance than after the fact, because it comes off just looking like you're making excuses as to why the player is no longer part of your organization.
Yeah, it's a little bit contradictory. If they did offer the 3-year deal, which I think they did. So there's a lot of question marks, but what I reported on this show before was that they weren't going near the Marcus Williams money. The Eagles wanted Marcus Williams last year, and they bowed out. He ended up getting $12 million, but I was told pretty early they thought Marcus was a better player. They weren't going that high. And that was when people were talking about the franchise tag, which is 14.46. And I said, no way is that going to be put on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But not in a million years would I have thought he'd get 1 year, $6.5 million. Remember, it's not $8 million. It could be $8 million. He got 1 year, $6.5 million. And get this, Ed, Marcus Epps got more guaranteed money than C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Who had that on their bingo card?
Yeah, that's tough to figure there. But listen, I talked to Chauncey a couple days before the Super Bowl, and I talked to Denard Wilson, and I wrote about Chauncey Gardner kind of maturing when he came here to Philadelphia. And Denard Wilson painted a picture of a Gardner-Johnson who came to town really just all about himself. He just wanted to go out and make plays and, didn't care as much about the team. And Denard Wilson said he sat him down and had a long talk with him about how he has to, be more team oriented. And it took Gardner-Johnson, and he even said this, about a month before that kind of clicked. So, maybe right there is a little bit of a concern that, he's all about himself, and now he's on this 1 year deal. And is he going to freelance to try to put up numbers and at the, potential harm of the team overall? I mean, maybe. But he talked about his maturation here, and he talked about Marcus Epps was a big hand in helping him kind of see the light, so to speak. And he talked about how he's learned in Philadelphia. He learned how to get along better with his teammates, how he learned to interact better with his teammates. So that sounded like that might have been a problem, is him in the locker room not really getting along too well with his teammates, or just kind of being aloof from his teammates. But he learned how to do that. So, those are all kind of little indicators to me that, yeah, those are some issues that maybe the Eagles are concerned about. Epps is no longer here. He left before Gardner-Johnson, and those two were pretty tight, according to Gardner-Johnson. So, those were some concerns that they had. Denard Wilson is no longer here. So some of that support stuff isn't in place for Gardner-Johnson anymore. So maybe that's kind of what changed a little bit in their thinking.
All right, Eddie Kracz, how can the Eagles possibly fill the void of blocking wide receiver that is left by the removal of Zach Pascal from the roster of the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, didn't they use Jalen Reagor to block at times too? Wasn't Reagor
JJ? That was JJ's
JJ. You can find another wide receiver who can block, Eddie Kracz. I'm not losing.
No, but JJ never played. Zach played. I will say, and I joke around and we smile, but Zach played 400 reps last year, so he played quite a bit, like way more than JJ Arcega-Whiteside. And he really is a good blocker. So it's like a luxury. Most teams don't have it. We just talked, PFF had him as the third best blocker amongst receivers in the NFL. It's nice when you have, and you're not going to have that. So, I mean, yeah, it's not going to matter much. You're probably going to forget about it. Nobody's paying attention. But I remember that touchdown he had against Pittsburgh. Like, everybody jumped the route because they thought Zach was going to block, and all of a sudden he runs a route and he's wide open. I don't know. It's a little bit. He really was a nice part of this team in a small role. And I think that deserves to be mentioned a little bit.
Yeah. Listen, if you're a receiver, you want to catch the ball. You don't want to go out there and block every play. So it takes someone who's able to kind of push their ego aside a little bit and say, okay, I'll do my role, whatever that is. If it's blocking in the run game, then that's what I'm going to do. And he played 400 snaps. And how many catches did he have? Like 15 maybe?
Yeah.
15. I mean, so he knew his role. He didn't mind doing that role. And those types of guys can be hard to find. Now, maybe Britton Covey can block a lita bit. Maybe he's going to be on the field.
Come on. Poor Britton. He's already a crash test dummy. He's not blocking anybody.
Yeah. I don't know who's going to be your blocking receiver now. But I think on the list of priorities, that's probably, down outside the top 5.
Yeah, but when you have an RPO zone read offense, it's more important for the Eagles than it is for a lot of other teams, I would say. Because of their style of offense.
A.J. Brown blocks, Devontae Smith blocks. Those guys
not like this guy. Not like this guy.
So, somehow I think the Eagles are going to be able to find someone who will do what he did easier than they're going to find someone to get. How many tackles did T.J. Edwards have this year? 150-something?
Yeah, well, they should have kept T.J. I'm on board. That to me is that's appalling that they didn't keep TJ at that
That's
number.
a much bigger concern as to how are you going to replace this going forward, TJ Edwards tackles as compared to Zach Pascal's blocks. I think they'll be able to find a facsimile for.
Well, once the quarterback of the defense, the leader of the defense who played, 92% of the snaps, the other guy's a role player. I'm on board. I think the Eagles are too slavish to this valuation of positions. Look, I get it. You don't want to pay off all linebackers a lot. You don't want to pay running backs a lot. But somebody's got to play. And we've been through it, the Eric Wilsons of the world and the Corey Nelsons of the world and the Nate Garys of the world. The Eagles finally got a middle linebacker, and they said, see ya for $6.5 million.
Yeah. But you wonder, too, how much of that TJ wanted to go back to Chicago and play for his hometown team, kind of like Hassan Reddick did last year when he wanted to come back to play for the Eagles. You wonder if TJ really wanted to go play in Chicago, and maybe the Eagles would have matched that number, maybe given him a little more, but TJ's like, I just want to go back to Chicago and play for the Bears. I mean, we haven't talked to TJ. We don't know what his thoughts are on that, but certainly that had to play a role in his decision, I think.
Yeah, but Kaiser White wanted to come home and play for the Eagles, and he did until the Eagles didn't want to pay him. And then he wanted to go somewhere else and go with his bud, Jonathan Gannon, all the way on the other side of the country. He just left his hometown team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah,
he's the guy I probably would have signed. I mean, 2 years, $11 million. Is that what he got in Arizona?
Yeah.
To me, that's the guy. I mean, he was the second leading tackler. He had 110 tackles, I think. I mean, their top 3 tacklers are gone. Edwards, White, and Epps. They were your top 3 tacklers, and now you don't have them anymore. You hope Nakobe Dean can do it. You hope that, he can put up over 100 tackles. But after that, who do you have? What are you going to do? I mean, is Bobby Wagner going to come walking through that door on a 1-year, $10 million
deal?
Nice.
That'd be nice. I wouldn't be complaining.
David, 33 years old. Is he going to be the guy? Those guys aren't going to come any cheaper than TJ Edwards would have. But you need somebody, and you can't just go into the draft and pick somebody in the 4th round or the 3rd round or wherever you're going to pick somebody. Is Davion Taylor going to be able to step up into a role after being on the practice squad last year? A guy that every time he seems to be taking a step forward gets hurt. So is he going to be the guy? I mean,
maybe Jay Elliott's got the key to Davion Taylor. Maybe the new linebackers coach. He had him in Colorado.
I don't know. I mean, Jody's right. You need somebody to come in and play, and I'm not sure you want to go draft a guy in the someone in the second round and make him your starter next to Nakobe Dean, then you're really young at that spot. Not to mention you still have Reed Blankenship, a second-year player on the back end, and whoever else that they land at that position. So they need, I think, a veteran to come in at the linebacker spot. And, you know, they're going to have to find one and hope maybe it is Wagner or David or whoever else you like at that linebacker. I thought David Long would have been a good fit. He went to Miami to the Dolphins on a pretty cheap deal. So I don't know what they're going to do at the linebacker spot. But we know, John, like you said, they don't value it. I doubt they're going to draft one on the first day for sure, maybe not even the second day. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, by the way, for Nakobe Dean fans, and Jody is obviously one of them, enjoy him while he's here because they're not paying him on that second deal. So enjoy it while you can.
Got 3 years of Nakobe after getting to his rookie season before he hits the open market. But then again, we have seen Howie in years other than this past year get an extension done ahead of time. We'll see if Nakobe falls into that category. Key question, Eddie Kracz. When Bijan Robinson is scoring touchdowns for the Philadelphia Eagles this year, will this be seen at Lincoln Financial Field? Will they, as an homage to his college days down in Austin, Texas, will this become a sign seen here in Philadelphia when Bijan crosses the goal line for the Eagles?
Listen, if he is in Philadelphia and he's scoring touchdowns, which he will do if he's in Philadelphia, he needs something different. I don't think you can go back to your college days. Turn the page.
Gotta wipe that out, huh?
Yeah,
even if he asks for it, says, listen, this motivates me. This gets me going. You guys got to give this to me when I get the touchdown. Sorry, that's a Texas thing?
Well, I mean, listen, he can do whatever he wants. If Howie Roseman's not going to tell him what to do, but if I'm Bijan, I'm endearing myself to Eagles fans. This is who's I'm playing for now, and I'm going to start learning how to flap my arms like an eagle. When you see guys score the touchdown, they start doing that.
By the way,
they're moving pretty good. That's kind of eagle-like.
Maybe with a flashlight. Maybe it's one of those hand things you do with the flashlight. And you can make those hand motions and put little.
Bijan puts one picture up on Instagram, and everybody forgets about the great Rashawn Penny. What happened to the great Rashawn Penny? And he's going to be phenomenal behind this offensive line, and he averages 6.1 yards per carry. But in all seriousness, they signed Rashad Penny, Greedy Williams, second-round pick in Cleveland, injury-prone. Rashawn, obviously, first-round pick, injury-prone. Now Justin Evans, second-round pick, injury-prone. All at 1 year, very cost-effective deals. Any of those guys excite you with their potential?
Well, I think Penny does for sure. I mean, but again, it's the whole injury thing. I know he said that he wants a refresh or a restart to his career, like maybe a dozen times during his intro press conference. And to me, it is tantalizing. If he can play 17 games, he's going to be a 1,000-yard guy. I mean, he's a big, strong.
Oh, he's huge. You weren't there, Ed. He's got a neck like you wouldn't believe. He looks like a linebacker. He might play linebacker.
I think that's a bad thing. I think because he's as big as he is, because he's as strong as he is, he's ready, willing, and able to just plow it up in there into the middle. And that's how he ends up getting hurt every single year. He's got trackman speed that if he broke it outside a little bit more, he could make a little bit more of those stretch plays. And what's the word I'm looking for, John? The Eagles
explosive plays?
No, the Eagles don't want to give him up.
X plays?
What kind?
X plays.
No,
explosive plays.
What the hell am I thinking of? There's a specific word to describe it.
No, that's what they say. There's
I'm not coming up with it.
The turnover ratio, and win the explosive play battle.
Explosive. Okay, maybe it was explosive. It scares me a little bit. So it must not have been you, Eddie Kracz. I thought it might have been because I couldn't remember exactly who it was. A guy who I think the Eagles would have been better advised signing than Rashad Penny, if you're going to let Miles Sanders walk out the door, would have been Deontay Foreman, who had a really nice year in Carolina after CM got traded out to San Francisco. More of a given, not as much of an injury risk as Rashad Penny. Penny got 1.3 with incentives get to 2. Deontay Foreman got 3. What would you rather have under those 2 deals? Roll the dice with Rashad Penny, could crap out, or you could hit big time, the snake eyes and score at big odds. Or would you rather have more of a proven guy and a little bit less risk in a guy like Deontay Foreman?
That you have to pay $1 million more to, which really
Correct.
isn't that much. But, if you're looking at it from Roseman's point of view, every $1 million that you have left to spend could help. And I don't think he's done adding. I think he'll continue to add somebody at that spot. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know who I'd rather have, to be honest. I think Penny was a good pickup, low risk, high reward type player. Yeah, Foreman is a healthier history. But you're rolling the dice on Penny, and you're not paying that extra $1 million. And it is exciting to see what he could be if he stays healthy. And the Eagles like to manage their guys. How they run their camps, their training camp practices, and their practices. Maybe they feel like, we can get him through a season with a day off every week, like we give our veterans. Scaled back practices, which Jason Kelsey said has probably added a year or 2 to his career. So that's probably what they're thinking is, we can get him to the finish line because of the way we run our business here.
Boy, that's interesting, Ed. So I'll end it there with you at Kracz E on Twitter. Make sure you follow Ed, SI.com/NFL/Eagles. Read them there. Are the Eagles too, I don't want to say, they have a little bit too much hubris with these injuries? Because, I just mentioned him. Rashad Penny, his history. Greedy Williams, his history. He's going to get introduced today, by the way. Now Justin Evans, his history. Do they think they're better than everybody else when it comes to managing injuries? And they had a great season this year, and they stayed relatively healthy. Is that, do they discount the word luck? We all know football coaches don't like using that word, but when it comes to injuries, that's part of it. You got to have a little bit of luck. Do they think they control it a little bit too much?
It wasn't that long ago when we were saying that the Eagles were too injured. They always had injuries. And then they changed medical staffs and training staffs. They went through a couple different ones each year. So I don't know. Now we've seen it swing the other way. I don't know if you can ever be fully confident in that. You can't legislate against injuries. If they're going to happen, they're going to happen. I think they think, listen, we signed these 3 guys with this injury history. If we can bat 1,000 with those 3 guys and we can get them through 17, then that's great. But I think you're hoping to hit, at least 333 and get in the Hall of Fame. You hope one of those guys hits and plays all 17. Which one will it be? I don't know, but I think that's kind of what they think is, listen, the more guys we throw at it who have this injury history, maybe we'll hit with one of them, and that's all we need.
All right, well, then I'm going to hold both of your feet to the fire. Under, over, games played, Rashad Penny this year. The number is 9. Under, over, push. And that's basically what he's averaged his entire career is about 9 games a year.
He's never played more than 10 his whole career. He come in 18?
He played 14 his first year.
Oh, he did play 14? Yeah. So I'm going over. I'll probably even go over 14. I think he's going
to over 14. Are you nuts?
Mark it down. March 21st, first day of spring.
I got to write this down. Kracz must have done some crack for breakfast.
Yeah. I'm going under because Bijan Robinson's going to be here, and they don't need him. He's going to get cut.
Yeah, that's true.
That's right. If he doesn't make the roster and he's only got, like 500 and change guaranteed?
Yeah.
They can absolutely.
Oh, they can move on. $600,000. Yeah, they can move on.
Yeah. That would be
okay. Well, maybe he'll play over 14 for another team.
No. I didn't ask you about another team. Okay. I asked you about the Philadelphia Eagles, Ed Kracz.
Okay. Well, I'll still stick with my guns there. I do think there's a chance they draft Bijan. I don't know, but
well, he's definitely not. You're definitely not winning if they draft Bijan.
No, you're right about that. But right now, like I said, first day of spring. Second day of spring, whatever it is, I'm going over 14. I'm
nice.
Shatter
optimism. That optimism. They're going to hire you.
Eagle fans
to
are
be in
loving Eddie
that
Kracz
medical department just for your optimism.
He is Mr. Glass is not only half full, it's 3/4 full. Oh, it's spilling over with a 17-game season out of Rashad Penny.
Well,
Good
hey,
luck
Jody,
with that.
just write that number down right next to Sam Howell.
I got it right.
Prediction of Sam Howell. Just write it down there right next to my Sam Howell pick of being an NFL starting quarterback.
Yeah, I'll set the number. Same thing, 9 games. Sam Howell start 9 games this year?
Over.
Oh, you are way too optimistic. All right, Eddie K, always a pleasure, brother. Appreciate it. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Kracz feeling his oats today on
over 14. Now, come on, 9 is a good number.
9 is the fair number. That's what he's averaged for his career. You take his 5 years in Seattle, 8 and change per games per year.
Boy, even if he's here, I can't go over 14. I'm going to go over 9, though. I think you
got to include the John McMullen, as well pointed out, possibility of he's released. And then he's a goose egg for the Eagles.
I think the Eagles are going to draft a running back, not Bijan Robinson. I think they're going to draft a running back on day 3. It's a very deep running back draft. I know they don't have any picks yet, but they will. Be patient, just like with Howie. They will add some picks in the 4th, but somewhere 6th round, which they don't have.
If they add a running back pick, and they've already got 3 running backs on the board, we know Trey Sermon would probably be the odd man out. Who is the running back most likely to be on that inactive list that you get every single Sunday when you're at the stadium? The rookie guy,
the rookie,
the
rookie, yeah, the rookie. As long as they'll give Rashawn opportunity, at least early in the season. Then if he starts failing or not succeeding, which, to be honest, if he's healthy, I think he's going to succeed behind this offensive line. So
do I. But
I don't think there's going to be much of an issue with that. I think, just as I say with the term luck, I think he's due for some good luck. So I'm going over 9. I think he's due. Still a young guy. I think he's due for some good luck. But I can't go over 14. Boy, that's a big number.
Eddie Kracz, Mr. Optimist. All right, McMullen and McDonald, you know what we got to do. Come back, put a bow in the show.